Good morning. I'm with Craig Hallworth, Senior Vice President and Chief Financial Officer of Gunnison Copper. Gunnison is out with some news this week. This is a company that puts out a lot of news flow, pretty active, talking to investors, and they have their first copper sales confirmed from Southern Arizona. So, Craig, you're a mining company now.
Thank you so much, Robert. It's great to be here, and thanks to everyone for listening to about Gunnison Copper today. And really appreciate you pointing that out. We're a mining company now. I think a lot of junior developers out there, they're striving for what we've just achieved, and it's a big milestone. We had our production a couple weeks ago, that first copper cathode coming off the plant. I was down at the site. I toured the plant. I saw the copper being piled on the dock. It was a beautiful sight, Robert. Just seeing that gleaming, beautiful, shiny copper, finished product, ready for sale domestically in the United States. It's going into all of those supply chains, defense, energy, manufacturing, U.S. consumption. And so it was a very beautiful sight. And then to see the big trucks coming, and we just loaded that copper. It was over 200,000 pounds of copper, and we sold that over $1 million. So that's just a drop in the bucket. That's $1 million. This thing can produce a nameplate capacity of 25 million pounds a year. So if you take that number, 25 million, multiply that by $5. A lot of people think copper's heading to $5 right now. You're talking about $125 million. So that's the kind of numbers we're talking about. And that's what we're very excited to have finally kicked this off with some sales and some cash in the door.
Yeah, I think copper's going to $5. It's $4.80 this morning. We're almost there. It might be going to $6 or $7, Craig, but it might take a little more time to get there. But yeah, that's fantastic, and it's great to see the pictures of the big truck, loaded with 220,000 pounds of copper cathode. So I'm a little bit of a nerd about these things, and you're a CFO, so you like math. So by my math, when this reaches nameplate, we probably want to see 2 of those trucks coming there to site, like every week. Is that right?
Oh, we'll be talking about 2 trucks a day. I mean, we're going to be talking about trucks. Yeah, there's a lot of trucks. That's a lot of copper, right? I mean, if you compare that to the biggest copper mines in the world, it's a modest size. But considering that it's from ore to finished product right in the United States, like there's not a lot of mines in the country that can say that. There's a lot of mines in the country. They're mining, they're making a concentrate, they're shipping it to Asia, right? And of course they had to, because the Newton technology, is just being demonstrated for the first time with us. This is a technology that we can finally leach sulfide copper ore here in the country and turn it much more cheaply, much more cleanly into finished copper in the country without having to send it over to Asia, without having to lose control of that critical mineral that's really vital to so many of our manufacturing supply chains here.
Yeah, copper is vital to everything in the economy. So it's fantastic that you guys are in production. So I noticed the shares moving up on Thursday, up a bit today again. So it looks like a breakout in the chart. Knock on wood, it can change. It can go up, it can go down, it can go sideways. But definitely something changed on Thursday. Do you think that the market said, hold on, this is an actual copper miner now? They have cash flow, and some new buyers came in there.
I think so, Robert. I mean, we're seeing more and more new buyers. We're seeing new investors into the stock. I'm getting emails every day from new investors and also existing investors, thanking us for our strategy and for moving the stock along. Since we pivoted our flagship, the Gunnison Copper project, earlier in the year, about a year ago now, actually, from an in situ leaching approach to an open pit approach, our stock is actually up over 150%. So I think we're seeing some really good momentum in the stock because of the Gunnison Copper project pivot to an open pit. It's a traditional technology. It's a scale. This asset's got enough production that it could potentially produce up to 8% of the country's total production. So it's got that scale. It's a simple flow sheet. It makes the copper in the US. So I think that's the focus for a lot of investors. But now fast forward to this past couple of weeks, and we've got what a lot of other companies don't have. That's a producing mine. We've got the Johnson Camp mine. It's now producing, it's now selling, it's now getting some cash inflow, it's got revenue. So this is something that we have that a lot of others don't have. And even though we're up 150% in the last year, take a look at our valuation. Robert, this is what I really want to focus on here, because for me, this is the most important part that investors need to look at. If you take a look at our valuation, a price to net asset value, we're probably trading at about a 0.1, maybe a 0.12 price to net asset value. But if you look at our peers, if you look at some of those other projects, those development companies, those single asset companies in Southern Arizona, and there's some great companies there, by the way, you take a look at those, they're trading actually at about a 0.4 or a 0.45. And those projects are the same as ours in terms of PEA level, preliminary economic assessment level engineering. That means they don't have a reserve yet, and they're pre-permitting. They don't have permits yet. In our case, our Gunnison project is actually permitted for in situ leaching. So we fully permitted it already under the previous approach, which means that our advantage there is we just need to file permit amendments to convert that to an open pit. So coming back to the valuation gap, if we're trading at a 0.12 and comparable peers, in our opinion, are trading at a 0.4 or a 0.45, I mean, investors can see that clear valuation gap. And we should be re-rating, in my opinion, to that based just on the Gunnison project alone. So if you're buying the stock, which I suggest people do, in order to close that valuation gap for Gunnison, you're essentially getting exposure to this producing mine, Johnson Camp, which is demonstrating a groundbreaking technology of Newton LLC, a subsidiary of Rio Tinto. It's demonstrating that you're essentially getting that exposure for free. And on top of that, we'll talk about it later in the call, but we've got some incredible exploration upside as well.
Yeah, that's actually what I want to talk about next. You put this news out a few days ago, and it's basically a letter of intent. You're basically starting to make a deal with this tech startup to explore for copper, but also various other metals, including rare earths. So this is a big conversation in 2025, rare earths. I mean, we heard the president talking about trying to make a deal with Ukraine to find rare earths. Seems a bit far-fetched to go across the world into a war zone to find rare earth elements. Why can't we just find it here in the US? So, can you tell us about this?
Absolutely, Robert. Gunnison Copper, and by the way, please check out our website, GunnisonCopper.com. But Gunnison Copper has traditionally been a company that is very interested in innovation. I told you and I mentioned that we're going to be demonstrating this Newton technology, the first time ever. It's groundbreaking. But in addition to that, in the 1970s, we were a company then as well. We were one of the first mines ever in the world to use and demonstrate the SXEW technology that became so important across the globe. And on top of that, we also pioneered or virtually pioneered in situ leaching for copper mining at our Gunnison project. That was also a very groundbreaking, innovative approach to mining. So we've got a lot of experience with that. And in addition, Robert, the defense sector is something that's extremely important. It's really part of our mission here to make sure that our copper product goes into this country's defense sector, because copper is extremely important to that. It's the second most used metal in all of the defense industry. And we've been talking to a lot of big and great defense companies. And that's how we came to, know about this company called Lunasonde. This is a defense startup out of Tucson, Arizona. So it's a local company. It's got a great founder. His name's Jeremiah Pate, and he's actually a Forbes 30 under 30. He's a really smart guy. He worked at Raytheon. He did some work with rockets there. He's done a lot of work. And this technology that they've proprietarily developed, this is something that kind of has its beginnings in the space program. If you go back to the Apollo, if you look at the current exploration NASA's doing on Mars, they're scanning from space. They're trying to find all the geological resources they can to get ready for those future missions. So this technology that they've developed is a step beyond what they're using there to explore Mars. It's something newer and better, but it's sort of got its roots there. And we believe that this could be a game changer for discovering critical minerals in the United States. We looked at the technology and we believe it will be an order of magnitude better and faster for ore characterization, as well as, sort of that noise to signal ratio. That's very important for these types of scanning technologies. And we've signed a letter of intent with them recently. Investors can look at our website and take a look at that letter. And what we're going to be doing is essentially scanning our property, not only for copper, which, of course, we know we've got lots of that there, but also for a number of other critical minerals. An important one that I mentioned in a social post recently is gallium. Gallium is the mineral that's used in gallium nitride, which companies like Raytheon have been doing groundbreaking work, and it's really supporting the sort of laser and direct energy defense platforms that are desperately needed by this country and its allies, given to the emerging drone and missile threats. So that's a critical mineral, in my opinion. Copper's our bread and butter, but we're going to be looking for other minerals too. And I think this joint partnership with Lunasonde is attractive, not only to us, but I think also to the Department of Energy. We did receive a allocation of 48C tax credits from the Department of Energy for the Johnson camp, 13.9 million. I'm expecting to monetize that in the next few months. But we're also talking to them about potentially funding this joint venture with Lunasonde.
That's fantastic. So this is basically a technology that is airborne. So they're flying it above the property area, and they can see the subsurface. So they can see copper, rare earths in the subsurface. That's profound. I mean, this is like the holy grail. So I'd be really interested to see if this works, quite frankly, because it could be a big game changer.
Yeah, and that's what we're looking to see, Robert. I mean, we don't know if it will work as advertised, but we believe that it will. And the only way to find out is by doing this work with them. And I just want to point out, we've been talking to investors for a few months now about the possibility of a exploration partnership agreement with Rio Tinto. Rio Tinto's Newton, that's our strategic partner on the Johnson camp. They've got a big exploration group in the United States, and we've been talking to them. There's some interest there. And I just want to make sure that everyone knows that this deal with Lunasonde is not mutually exclusive with any deal with Rio Tinto. We can go ahead and sign an exploration partnership with them as well.
Very good. Craig, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Robert.